Hey gang, Mark Sweeney here from Austin Dental Spa in beautiful, hot Austin, Texas, with a $64,000 question for today is, can you sit yourself stupid? Well, it's a little more complex than that, but that's going to be on our topic list for today, and that's why I was doing the movement. We'll get around to that in my health tips, which is you've tuned in before to Wisdom Wednesdays, which we do every Wednesday around this time on Facebook Live. So you know that we do some kind of brand new scientific research. I got a big smile on my face last week because our topic last week showed up in the national news about 4 days later. So we scooped all the major news outlets last week with our study. If you want to go back and see, we've got them all archived on YouTube and on Facebook, so you can find previous Wisdom Wednesdays. But today, I asked the theoretical or hypothetical question, can you sit yourself stupid? It's actually a little bit different than that, but there's a study that just came out from Vanderbilt University. I really love when our studies come from the good old US of A. Last week, it was from the University of California in San Francisco. This week, it's from Nashville, hot off the press, published by the Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and it was published in the journal Alzheimer's and Dementia. So that's going to be part of our topic, and it's a real buzzword with all the stuff going on with President Biden recently. We'll probably, before the summer's over, do a little discussion about prostate cancer, because there's a lot of incorrect misinformation out there just in the last couple of days with people, supposed experts, disseminating a lot of false information. So we'll try to clear that up in a future Wisdom Wednesday before the summer's over. This study out of Nashville had 404 adults. I always like it when we've got more than a couple of dozen people, and it was over a 7-year period that they tracked these people. All of the participants were over the age of 50. Now, it didn't say anything, at least in the briefing that I read, about whether it was equally divided between male and female, only that they were all over the age of 50. There were 404 adults in the study, and they wore those watches, like eye watches, that tracked activity. Mainly what they were looking for, though, is the flip side of that. They were not looking for activity. They were looking for how sedentary these people were. How much did they sit? And this blew me away when I read this. These people, all over 50, in this subject group of 400 people, they sat for an average of 13 hours a day. Now, this is not counting the 8 hours that they probably slept. This is 13 hours. If you add 8 to that, that only means 3 hours they were up and moving around at all, because 13 hours, you add 8 onto that, there's 21, and then it's like, how do they sit for 13 hours? And then I think about what I do for a living, where you're sitting chairside, but I'm up and moving around and going and checking the people getting their teeth cleaned. So I'm far from what I would call a sedentary life. But this was 7 years, over 7 years, these people, 400 people, sat for 13 hours a day. And so the study found that in these adults over the age of 50, that the more sedentary they were, the more rapid cognitive decline they had, which is where the Alzheimer's and dementia comes in. Their brain actually shrunk in some areas, particularly in the hippocampus, which is part of the lower brain, and it's the portion that is responsible for memory, among all things. And so they said that they also noticed that the people who were the most sedentary out of this group of 1,400 people had slower mental processing speeds. They had more trouble recalling words, and they found it harder to name objects quickly. And again, they studied these same people over a 7-year period. So that's a pretty significant study. Another thing they found, and I had a father who the last 3 years of his life had Alzheimer's and gradually lost touch with who I was, who my mother was, and so I've got some personal experience with this. And then my mother lived to be 97, and the last 2 years of her life definitely experienced dementia. So these are not things to take lightly. They found in the study also there is a gene mutation in some people's brains, tends to be hereditary, called APOE4, and it's an allele, which is a gene portion in our DNA, and that the people that had that gene mutation noticeably declined and were much more likely to move into Alzheimer's. So what they also found was that the lack of activity slowed the blood flow to the brain, especially as they age. Now again, the youngest people in this study were 50, so everybody was over the age of 50. But they found not only decreased blood flow, but also an increase in the inflammation in the brain. Neither one of those are good things, because the blood flowing to the brain carries with it the nutrients that happen to be in our system. That's one of the jobs of circulation, is to bring oxygen and other nutrients that different body parts need to those different body parts. And inflammation, swelling, your brain can only experience so much inflammation before it starts compressing. So they think that those two things combined, lower blood flow and inflammation, also sped up the onset of dementia or Alzheimer's. So the common myth that most people have, including me before I read this study, is, hey, get out there and exercise. But they found that exercise somewhat mitigated it, but with regular exercise. But they found that you don't have to go work out at the gym. What you need to do is move more throughout the day, just regular movement, getting up and walking around. We've talked about that in previous Wisdom Wednesdays, about just 20 minutes of walking a day. The average has always been 30 minutes 5 times a week. That's 150 minutes of exercise in a week has been what the experts, supposed physiologic experts, recommend to the average American. What this study is suggesting is for clearer mental health, to just make sure you're up and moving around. I chuckle, my two 30-year-old dentists sit back in our office area, and they've each got like a 6-foot-long treadmill, and they stand there working on their computers, walking on that treadmill. I don't know, once swimsuit season is over, if they'll keep that up to stay in shape for the holidays. But boy, they put in the miles on that thing. And I thought, as I'm reading this briefing on this study, wow, they're onto something here for a different reason, but they're moving during the day. And we're up and walking around in this office all the time anyway. So far from what I'd call sedentary. But that segues into my health tip. I always end with a health tip, and this one was a slow pitch today to segue into this. Get moving. Keep moving. Find reasons to move during the day. I've even seen these things on Amazon where you can be sitting at your desk, and they've got these things that you can pedal, almost like a miniature bicycle or stairmaster kind of thing, so that your legs are moving. You're moving your body. Take regular breaks. Stand up and stretch. Lean against the wall. Consider a standing desk, like my two younger doctors have, where they actually raise the level up so that they can walk on that treadmill while they're in an upright position and still work on their computer. It can be done, because I see it happen every day. Take your calls on the go. Here's another suggestion. If you need to make a work call or even join a remote meeting, consider using a hands-free device or standing and walking while you're on the line. Easy enough. Lastly, incorporate desk exercises. That's what I was talking about with I guess my two younger dentists, that could be considered desk exercises, that they're walking on the treadmill. But those little, if you go on Amazon and say desk peddler, you'll find these things. They're not very expensive, and they look pretty simple, but you're like a miniature stationary bicycle. So the point is, Keep moving. Movement is good for your body. Movement is great for your brain, as this study shows. So get out there and move, and I will see you next week for another version of Wisdom Wednesday.